109 right now. You're at 109 right now. You're at 109 right now. You're at 109 right now.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Mic check. The audio is picking up. Maybe it's the headphones. All right, there we go.
You're at 109. You're at 100.
What's going on, good people? All right, I can hear myself clearly. Things are looking pretty good. Excuse me.
You're at 100.
Push-ups?
You're at 100.
No, it's 109.
109. All right. You're at 100.
I wonder why that is the way that it is.
C'est toujours un plaisir d'être là avec vous. Vous écoutez la fréquence 109. Merci à vous.
This is just too philosophical. Maybe I'm trying to combine things that can't be combined, but it makes sense to me.
This is the book, The Catch Me If You Can. All right. One Woman's Journey to Every Country in the World, Jessica Nabongo. This is her book. I checked out her book. Let's see. How did I find her? I'm not sure. Maybe on Instagram. Definitely on Instagram I found her. And then, yeah, I was inspired by her travels. All of her travel photos caught my eye. And so I'm like, I'm with it. I'm definitely in support of any, black man or a woman traveling. I found myself in that category now that I've been to 41 countries. And I search for inspiration from other travelers. And so Mrs. Nabongo is absolutely one of my heroes. She-ros, rather. Heroes, she-ros. Let's not be, gender specific. Let's just politically incorrect, all that kind of stuff. Whatever. So her book is entitled The Catch Me If You Can. And the first story, or the first country that I read in here, I didn't read it. I didn't start reading it from the beginning of the book, and I haven't finished the book. But I turned to Saudi Arabia first because she's been to Saudi Arabia, and so have I. I lived there for 2 years, and I wanted to get her impressions of Saudi Arabia. And it was fascinating that she was there pretty much at the same time that I was there. I left Saudi Arabia in November of 2018. So I had been there for a considerable amount of the year of 2018. And in 2018, that's when Ms. Nabongo arrived and traveled to Saudi Arabia. I'm flipping through the pages right now, hoping to find Saudi Arabia. But the reason why I made this, the reason why I am making this video right now is because something she wrote about, something she experienced, resonated with me, and I'm like, yo, I've got to talk about this. All right, so first let me see. Okay, page 286. That's where she writes about Saudi Arabia. 286. All right, here we go. All right. Hope you can see that. That's her photo. in Saudi Arabia. Now, the coolest part about Saudi Arabia, her experience, and let's see, wait, it says December of 2018, Saudi Arabia began for the first time to issue tourist visas. That's what she writes. So maybe our journey did not coincide because I left in November and then she's writing about December. And I visited Saudi Arabia in December 2018. There it is. That's where it says December. So we had just missed each other. I was there until November 3rd, 2018, and she arrived in December. All right. However, our experiences were similar because in 2018, that was a big year for Saudi Arabia. In 2018, Saudi Arabia reintroduced movie theaters in their country. Imagine that, for like 30 years, since the 70s, probably maybe during the 80s, but 30 years, that's like 80s. So maybe 40 years, between 30 and 40 years, Saudi Arabia did not have movie theaters and they weren't showing movies. I'm sure there was a black market. I'm sure Saudis were able to find a way to watch American movies, but the American influence through movies at movie theaters was non-existent in Saudi Arabia until 2018. So Ms. Nabongo experienced this. I'm sure she saw that, hey, movie theaters are now available. That's one thing. She didn't write about that. I'm just mentioning this because this is one of the examples of what, big changes occurred in Saudi Arabia in 2018. So movie theaters, that was one change. The other change was women driving. And for pretty much the same amount of time, perhaps longer, Saudis did not allow women to drive. But in 2018, all of that changed. So Ms. Nabongo wrote about that specifically, and I witnessed that as well during my travels to Saudi Arabia because, or for instance, I was in a parking lot. We had just gone to a local restaurant to grab a bite to eat, and as I'm pulling out, I was driving. I saw a young woman in the car next to ours preparing to practice driving in the parking lot. And as I was pulling back, I smiled her way, and she had the biggest smile on her face, like, I'm doing it, I'm doing it. She was fine. She did a great job. Whoever her instructor was, they were teaching her well, and all of that good stuff. But that was a major change because prior to any suggestion of women being able to drive, seeing a woman behind the wheel in Saudi Arabia, forget about it. There were very, minute, very small instances when a woman could jump behind the wheel of a car. However, oftentimes we would see 14, 15-year-old boys driving cars, or maybe even younger than that. But you had kids, young boys driving vehicles because they were the men in the family, or they were available. Let's say, okay, here's a scenario. Your mom needs you. Your mother needs to go to the supermarket, or she needs to go to the hospital. She needs to go somewhere, and she cannot drive. And you're a young child, young boy, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever your age is, and your mother looks to you to operate the vehicle. Son, I need to go X, Y, and Z. Drive me there. And your mother's 30, 40, whatever years old, 20, 30, 40, whatever, and she's putting her life in your hands as a young man. So you had these little boys holding the wheels, barely able to look over the wheels, driving around town, driving their mothers, their sisters, okay? Unbelievable reality that was for me, seeing all of that. And then in 2018 that changed because women could get behind the wheels of vehicles and drive. And Ms. Nabongo writes about that. So those two changes in Saudi Arabia were major changes that I witnessed firsthand living there. And it made for a wonderful experience being in Saudi Arabia, because it felt as if things were changing in a good way. Movies, especially. Otherwise, you were relegated to staying at home, staying behind, the walls of your home to watch or to entertain yourself, because there were no movie theaters, absolutely no clubs for music, no, not there weren't really big public venues. The biggest public venue in Saudi Arabia, which probably is still true to this day, my cell phone is ringing. It's the call of prayer. That's a little habit that I carried over from my time in Saudi Arabia. I set my I use Muslim Pro, I think is the name of the app, and it notifies me of the prayer calls. However, I'm rocking my Ethiopian Aksumite cross here. All right. They're all Abrahamic faiths, so no biggie there. The malls. The malls in Saudi Arabia are the public centers for entertainment. You go to the mall and there's a show going on, performers and other things, and festivals, and there's a lot of activity that takes place at the malls. And for that reason, people go to the malls, especially in the afternoons, because it's much cooler, right? During the day, it's extremely hot. And then when you go, people wake up and people are more active at night, in the afternoon, evenings, and at night, because it's much cooler at that time. And so people congregate at malls and what have you. Very different culture from the United States. Absolutely very, very different. So that's what I wanted to talk about first off, and that's just a little teaser. I'm already 12 minutes into this video and I haven't talked about what I really want to talk about, which is the discrimination and racism that I've experienced. And I'm inspired to talk about this. I'm encouraged to talk about this because Ms. Nabongo talked about this in the first I would say, chapter, in her introduction, as well as the first country she describes visiting or traveling to is the country she was born in, United States. And so she touches on discrimination and racism, and that's what this video is going to be about. So I'm going to get into it in a moment. We're going to do some station identification to let you know where you are, and then I'm going to take a sip of water and get right back to you.
C'est toujours un plaisir d'être là avec vous. Vous écoutez la fréquence 109. Merci à vous.
You're at 109 right now. You're at 109 right now.
Furthermore, I began to realize that my own beloved science contained within it pointers to God that could not be ignored. Not proofs, mind you, but certainly suggestions that make a strict atheist perspective rather hard to defend. There is something instead of nothing. No reason that should be. Those beloved second-order differential equations, why did they work? Why should mathematics be successful in describing how the universe is put together? Anyone who has worked in the field of physics will tell you the experience of first understanding Maxwell's equations is one of those moments of realizing that this is not just mathematical elegance, it is beauty. It is so simple, and yet it describes something so complex. That seems to suggest that the universe is put together by a mathematical mind. Otherwise, why would mathematics be so much in the fabric of the way in which matter and energy behave?
You're at 109 right now. You're at 109 right now. a commitment to the long haul. This is not about capturing a market share of audience, because that's what everyone's doing, right? So when you see, breaking news is about your algorithms, it's about the clicks, it's about getting the numbers so you can get the advertisers, so you can, and now we're feeding a beast and not the people.
Teach.
So when you come into a space and you're building a media outlet that says Black on it, but it's not really about Black people, it's about, again, grabbing Black people, not feeding Black people, you're going to always fail. Your presentation was all about numbers and this and that, but not about what are you giving us that we don't already have, which means you haven't even done your homework.
You're at 109 right now.
All right, guys, so I'm reading on page 20. Ms. Nabongo says, I could go on and on about what I love in the U.S., but America is a complicated country, and I cannot talk about it without talking about race and my personal experience as a Black woman. In fact, some of my worst travel experiences have been in my home country. All right. I'm not going to read all of her book to you, of course, right? So I'm going to skip to this part here. Let's start with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which gives me anxiety. From the first time in 2009 that I was sent to a secondary security screening to when I exited a flight, only to find an armed U.S. military officer asking for my passport. Assuming I wasn't American, I have been through the ringer. Mind you, this woman was born in Detroit, Michigan. There was the time returning from a work trip to Ethiopia that I was stopped and asked for my passport, which had already been checked and put away. After examining it, the officer asked me for a second form of identification, claiming she couldn't tell if it was me in the picture. The last instance, and there are plenty more in between, was in February 2021 when I was returning from a 5-day trip to Senegal. The immigration officer at JFK Airport asked how much luggage I had. When I told her that I had 3 checked bags, she flagged me immediately, saying I had a lot of luggage for such a short trip. I explained I had brought back 2 baskets for my house. That was not good enough. She continues, the challenge with this type of discrimination is that it occurs under the guise of doing one's job. Really, it is rooted in racism. I am the first to admit that I live a very privileged lifestyle, but my privilege will always come head to head with my oppression. It does not matter that I came out of a first-class seat. Excuse me, folks, my video recording has just turned off. It's because of the heat. The GoPro is too hot. So we're going to have to pause this recording and I'm going to have to get back to it. Interesting.
You're at 109 right now.
1 2 1 2. All right, guys, welcome back.
You're at 109 right now.
I have to hurry up with this part of it. This is the reason why I made this video. I wanted to talk about discrimination that I've experienced in America as of late, inspired by the stories from Jessica Nabongo, all right? And so before the GoPro overheated and I had to readjust my settings and whatnot, and then I was reading here. It said, the challenge with this type of discrimination is that it occurs under the guise of doing one's job. Really, it is rooted in racism. I am the first to admit that I live a very privileged lifestyle, but my privilege will always come head to head with my oppression. It does not matter that I came out of a first class seat before walking to immigration control. To those security officers, I'm just another African to be suspicious of. I purposely denote African because most of my Black American friends have not experienced what I have with American immigration, even those who have traveled with me on the same flight. All right, I have to make my comments quickly. I am a Black American. I understand how Africans differ from Black Americans. For instance, when I was living and working in South Korea, because I hold a blue passport, the United States passport, I was afforded certain privileges. In South Korea, for instance, they only hire people, nationals of 7 countries to teach English. Luckily, I am from one of those nations, the United States. Those nations include Canada, the U.S., England, Ireland, Australia, South Africa. That's 6, and there's one other. Scotland, New Zealand. That's the other one. Australia and New Zealand. So those are the 7 nations primarily. I think Scotland is part of the United Kingdom, so that's all there. Anyhow, so I was afforded a privilege already, just being an American working in South Korea. But I noticed that the Africans who had immigrated to South Korea were treated horribly and had to suffer under, they weren't, the red carpet wasn't rolled out for them. So that's a distinction right there between Black Americans and Africans, specifically in South Korea. So she's right. All right. And I can understand, sadly, I can understand, her having more African features and being suspicious, made to be, to feel less than, because they're more suspicious of her. That's horrible. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Let me say that again. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. All right. So that shouldn't be the case. Right. I was saddened to know that Africans were treated the way that they were being treated in South Korea. And, it's just some tacky mess all around the world. With regard to like TSA and returning home to America, like Miss Nabongo even writes that America is the most dangerous country she's traveled to. At least she feels that way. People have these misconceptions about other countries being unsafe, and that, home America being safer than other places, but that hasn't always seemed to be true. With all of the news and all of the incidents of mass shootings and things happening in America, it's like I lived in Korea for nearly a decade, and nothing that bad, happened. There was the Sewol ferry incident. That was horrible. Like, Koreans can do some bonehead things, make some bonehead mistakes that end up in casualties, but like purposely going and murdering people, like, nah, that's America takes the cake, when it comes to guns. But here's the thing. Here's my story, right? Ms. Nabongo talks about TSA, talks about customs officials and stuff. When I was flying back from South Korea back to America, and we had a layover in Hawaii. And I am a global entry, you know, global entry member. So that means when I fly back to the United States through from abroad, they don't hassle me. I don't have to wait in lines. I just zip right through. And for the most part, I've had no problems with global entry. I'm good, right? And but when I got to Hawaii, I started to get into the global entry line, and the police in Hawaii were like, whoa, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm getting into the global entry line because I'm a global entry member. And they were all suspicious. Well, show us your ID and prove it to us or whatever. I'm like, what? Like, man, you better, you know. So I showed them my ID and everything, and then they said, oh, okay, now you can go. So there was prejudice there because for them, I didn't look like what they expected, to come through the global entry line. They expected me to be in another section. But I'm like, no, forget how I may have been dressed. Forget any preconceived notion, man, you know. And they looked at the paperwork. They looked at my ID and everything and let me go. So that was cool. So no real big issue. It was just the perception that I didn't belong there. That really irked me that day. But onward and upward. But then most recently I was flying from Ghana back to the United States, and I had a couple of flights, 3 flights actually, more than 6 hours in length each leg. And when I arrived in Washington D.C., I was tired. I arrived in Dulles, and Dulles is actually in Virginia. So when I got off the plane, I was a little tired. I just didn't want to feel hassled at all. So I had gone through global entry with no problems. I grabbed my bags, and I'm leaving the airport. Now, when I'm leaving the airport, that's the last point I would expect to be harassed by any official. I mean, I've already gone through global entry. I've already gone through all of the measures, all the security measures, and now I'm leaving the airport, literally walking away from baggage claim, and an officer approaches me and asks, and man, they started asking me some questions, like, what do you do? And where were you traveling from? Where are you from? And I'm like, mind you, I'm already tired. I'm like, I'm from America. Matter of fact, I'm from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. And they're like, where are you traveling from? I was like, I just flew in from Ghana. And then she's asking me, what do you do? Now, she got me with the what do you do because I'm in between jobs, and I don't want to say I'm unemployed. That's just not cool. That's just not my style. Like, I'm unemployed. I ain't doing nothing. Because I'm doing many things, right? I've got my creative outlets, YouTube, podcasting, all of this internet stuff, blogging and stuff. I run my own small business, and before this transition that I'm in, I was doing deliveries for a catering service. So I did, I was quote unquote, employed. But this was a little gray area. This was a little fuzzy. But not to mention, I'm also a licensed real estate salesperson. So, but I never bring that up because I'm not actively selling and I'm not actively marketing and in that business. So I don't bring that up. But I could have just told her that. But anyway, there was no answer that was good enough for her. There was no answer that was good enough. And I kept telling her, look, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles and this and that. I do this, I do that. I just flew, thousands of miles. I'm tired. I have a couple of days in the city before I go back to Los Angeles. And she was just really, really annoying the hell out of me after those long flights. And I was trying to be as nice as I could, but I knew she only stopped me because I'm black. And I knew there was no answer that I could give her that would satisfy her. Just harassing me. Because soon after that incident, that harassment ended, and I grabbed my bag and I'm exiting, I noticed there's a family of 4, a white family of 4, who she did not stop. to ask, hey, where are you going? Where did you come from? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just felt felt deflated in that moment. Just like, this is America? Man. That's my story. That was my experience, inspired by this book right here, which I'm reading, by Jessica Nabongo. The Catch Me If You Can. Why they put the Catch Me If You Can? She is the Catch Me If You Can lady. I guess that's what it is. 195 countries, right? I'm hot on her tail, trying to catch up with her at 41 countries. Okay, guys, thanks for listening to my story. This is Larry Wiggs with the iSee109 podcast, with the iSee109 YouTube page and all of that good stuff, because you know what? I see 10-9. Can you see it? I see it. Do you see it? I see it. Kobe, let them know where they are.
You're at 109 right now.
Window seat surfing on the wing. As an adolescent, I dreamed of big things. Climb to the top of the mountain to see the scene. Petty wap don't want me to have anything. I'm the captain, no jet lag. Boeing jet swag. Floating to the sunset, keep the drinks coming back. She summoned me, gave me turbulence on the sink. Pretty flight attendant boarding pass, I'm a buddy. Stunting first class, vegan meal